Yeah, so in our last discussion, we were talking about performance testing and where we saw that like when to use or when to rely on your design and verification. And then we also talked about your beta testing certification standards. Then we also talked about your speed, robustness, and reliability playing a major role and helping in order to measure the performance. And post which we saw that there is something which is very important as far as your performance testing is concerned, because uh, we said that we will not prefer to visit a website or an app if it is taking too much time. So there we saw that throughput plays a major role, and your response time take also plays a major role in it. And then we said that okay, we can have like load testing, stress testing, endurance testing, spike testing, and volume testing to deal with performance. Then also we said that it's not only the software or the application which is responsible for your delay or the latency, right? Latency. We said that okay, there is something which is like called as your network latency, and there is something which is called as your product latency. And if we add both the things, we get the actual response time. That's what we saw in our last discussion. So once we have done this kind of testing, so we also said that okay, if suppose I have to talk about your product latency, then I need to go for tuning as well. I need to look at the background processes which are running and which are creating or which are hampering the overall working of the application. So we also said that in case of your performance testing process, we are going to identify the testing environment. And if suppose I have identified the testing environment, the next thing which I am going to do is I am going to identify the performance acceptance criteria. And then further I'm going to plan and design the performance tests. Then lastly, we'll configure the test environment, because tuning is to be done, and ultimately we are going to implement the test design, right? That's what we are going to go ahead. And lastly, obviously, we'll run the tests. And so this was all about the discussion, and in today's video we are going to talk about your user acceptance testing, right? When we say users acceptance testing, from the title itself you might have got an idea that this is something which is dealing with the end user who is going to accept the product. So this is a type of testing which is performed by the end users or maybe the client in order to verify or in order to accept the software system before moving the software application to the production environment. So this user acceptance testing, it is also called as UAT, is done in basically since now the product is ready and it is going to be accepted by the end user or the client. So this can be considered as the final phase of testing after once the functional integration and your system testing is done. So this testing is done by customers or the representative of the customer. Sometimes some of the representatives sit, and the acceptance tests are written to execute the near real life scenarios or the real life scenarios, and your verification of functional requirements and the non-functional aspects of the system is done. So basically what we do is that we validate your end-to-end business flows, right? Your end-to-end business flows. So in your user acceptance testing, we don't focus on the cosmetic errors or maybe the spelling mistakes, because that part we assume that it is to be done by, or maybe that there we talk about user experience, right? And the user interface testing as well. Here we are talking about the acceptance testing. So we don't look into the cosmetic errors or maybe any spelling mistakes or maybe some system tests. And what we do is that we carry out this testing in a separate testing environment, where we'll have production like data setup. So it's a kind of black box testing, you can say, because I'm not worried about the internals of the system, where 2 or more end users will be involved. So basically clients are involved, or the representatives, or the end users. These people are required. So now look at the aim of acceptance testing. So the basic aim is to determine whether the software is fit for the user, because now end users and clients are involved. So what we're going to do is that we'll see that whether this suits or maybe fits to the demand of the end user or not. And this basically makes the user confident, because now the user is actually using it or maybe giving a try, you can say. So in that case, this activity makes the user confident about the product, and this determines whether a software system satisfies its acceptance criteria or not, because now we'll be matching that whatever things were listed are provided by the product or not. So in that case we'll look into this acceptance criteria clause as well. Enable the buyer to determine whether to accept the system or not. Now since the end user or the buyer is actually using this particular product, so that gives a scope, and the user can take a call on accepting the system product or not. That means the user may send back for some minor or major modifications as well in this case. So there are possibilities where this acceptance testing may fail, right? So that would result into your entire product rejection, and if the project gets rejected, so obviously there will be like financial loss, and possibility is like we need to rework on the product, and definitely if I have to rework, then there is a loss of efforts and time, so that ultimately results into your financial loss only. So there are like several acceptance criteria. So one is your product acceptance, another one is your procedure acceptance, and the last one is your service level agreement. So we'll see these things one by one. So just try to understand, because we are talking about the product, the entire product, the procedure used, and some of the service level agreements. So, and along with there will be obviously some implied requirements as well. So this UAT basically, what we do is we start with development. I'm taking this software development life cycle from this phase, development, that would lead to testing, where I'll go ahead with user acceptance testing, post which I'll go for production. It can be a deployment as well, you can call it as a deployment as well. And this acceptance or user acceptance testing is basically required, because once the software has undergone unit integration or system testing. So based on the requirements or the documents by their own understanding, and further, some of the required changes during the development are not effectively communicated. So for testing whether the final product is ready to be accepted by the end user or the client, we need this particular user testing, because in this development phase, developers sometimes include some of the features based on their understanding, because I may fail to communicate some of the things to you people, right? So similarly, if suppose your client or the user fails to communicate some of the things, so in that case also I have to go for this user acceptance testing. Then the requirements changes are not communicated effectively to the customers, then to the developers. In that case also I need to go for this acceptance testing. So improper communication, that is also one of the reasons because of which I may need this thing. So coming back to this, let's talk about your product acceptance. So in this, what we do is like each requirement is associated with your acceptance criteria. Additionally, one or more requirements may be mapped to form your acceptance criteria, and the prioritization of the requirements and the product meeting these requirements is something which is necessary. Right. So your categories of the test cases are grouped to form a particular acceptance criteria, and testing for adherence to any of the specific legal or contractual terms is also looked for the product acceptance. So testing for compliance to specific laws is also required. For example, your Sarbanes-Oxley law is very popular, right? So in US, it's majorly followed for accepting a particular software. So this was about the product, whether to accept it. Next is the procedure which has been applied, right? So procedure acceptance, that means your user administration and troubleshooting should be the part of the product release, and a procedure can also be like along with the executables, binaries and the source code of the product to be delivered in a CD, and then a minimum of like 20 employees are trained on the product usage prior to your development, right? These can be, this is a rough figure. So this can be one of the examples, right? The procedure that, okay, along with this, I need to, as a developer, I'll be, or maybe a product development company, I have to train my end users as well, right? Many times, like suppose we started with our own MIS, so we were trained, right? Training was given to us in order to use it effectively. Now, this was all about your procedure acceptance. Now let's talk about your service level agreements. From this title itself, you might have got some idea that your SLA is basically a part of the contract signed by the customer and the product organization. It can be like all major defects that come up during the first 3 months of the deployment need to be fixed free of cost, right? This can be one of the clause, not only 3, it can be 6. That depends on what kind of service level agreement we are doing. And the application, one of the points can be like downtime of the system should be less than an hour per quarter. And even after all these things, like if suppose we observe some major defects, that should be fixed within 24 hours. That can be one of the service level agreement. Now let's talk about selecting the test cases for acceptance, right? So one is like end-to-end functionality verification. We can have like domain tests, we can have like user scenarios test, we can have some basic sanity testing as well, and new functionality test. If suppose I'm using some new functionality, then I can test it. A new non-functional test, and then I can have like tests pertaining to legal obligations and your service level agreements once again. Then we have like acceptance test data as well. We'll have one acceptance test team. This team will have like people who are involved in day-to-day activities of the product development and usage. It will have like the team will be familiar with all the possible scenarios. Your product management, your support, and the consulting team will also be a part of it. Then there will be like some people who have good knowledge about the customers, and then we have like people with business process language. So these people will be a part of your acceptance testing. Now let's talk about the multi-phase model. Basically, from this, ISTQB, in the ISTQB exams, we get some good number of questions from multi-phase testing model, and this particular topic is very easier as well. Now the point is, what is this ISTQB, right? So this ISTQB is your International Software Testing Qualifications Board, right? So this board conducts exams, right? Or you can say some certifications. So there you get the certifications for various international standards. Some of the time, if suppose let's say I, being a product development organization, is looking to get a product, so then the client may say that okay, your testers may be certified in ISTQB, then only they can test the product. So that kind of team I need, right? So professionals need this particular exam to be qualified. So let's talk about your multi-phase testing model. So this can be one of the possible thing. On this side I have timeline, on this side I have testing technique. So what we have done is, this is like two strict entry criteria. Once the unit testing is over, then only I'll go ahead with a component testing. Once component testing is over, I'll go ahead with integration. Once this integration testing gets over, I'll go for system testing, and the last one is like user acceptance testing. So this is like a time consuming process. And along with it, this becomes your strict entry criteria. This is like too mild, right? We started with the unit, parallelly we went for component, along with that we went for integration, we went for system, we also went for acceptance testing, right? So what happens is, like, many times now you have to rely on stubs and drivers. Recall the discussion on stubs and drivers, right, which plays a very important role in your integration testing. And then when something is not ready, I'll go for one of the other things. So in some sense it can be very small, time consumed is too less, but your testing is not that proper, right? So it's like too mild. Somehow we are trying to where it's like some amount of overlapping is there, obviously, but it's like not that much time is consumed, as we saw in case of two strict criteria. Not that less amount is consumed in case of your two mild entry criteria. So this looks to be optimized, right? Some amount of overlapping is done just to reduce this time span. Now there is a software development model which is called as your ME model, right? In that, your user acceptance testing corresponds to the requirement phase of your software development lifecycle. right? So just I'm throwing the light just to recall that entire discussion, right? Every phase, like your business case, your requirements, right? We're having this like release testing, your acceptance testing, and this was saving time as well. Recall one of the discussions, right? So I'm trying to connect the dots that in this case we were dealing with a situation where the parallel things were going on, and another thing is like there are certain prerequisites of your user acceptance testing. So one is like your business requirements. These business requirements must be made available. Another is like your application code. This should be like fully developed, because if suppose I don't have this as fully developed, then going for user acceptance testing does not make any sense. Your unit testing, your integration testing, your system testing should be complete. Right. So only your cosmetic errors are acceptable. So cosmetic errors, we had a discussion on it a few minutes back, and I can also have like regression testing that can also be completed with no major defects, right? That can also be a thing. Your user acceptance testing environment must be ready, along with all those use cases and all, right? Because then only we'll have this. Then these are some of the things, these are some of the prerequisites for your user acceptance testing. But now the point is like how to do UAT, right? So what we do is that basically your UAT is done by your intended users of system or software. So this type of software testing usually happens at the client location, right? Which is can also be known as your beta testing, and only entry criteria of UAT are satisfied following like some of the tasks which need to be performed. So the tasks can be your requirements analysis. Everywhere you will see a requirement analysis, something which is found everywhere. Then you have like UAT plan creation. Then we have like identify test scenarios. Then we have like UAT test cases, creation of UAT test cases. Then we have your test data preparation, right? So basically, in these things, the time consumed is not much, because in the previous phases we have already we have dump of test data and other stuff, and we are only going for a subset kind of thing. So test run, and lastly I can confirm the business objectives. Right, these are some of the things, right? So in case of your analysis of business requirements, what we can have is like this becomes one of the major important activity in your user acceptance testing. The idea is to identify and develop the test scenarios. So your test scenarios will be derived from your business use cases, your process flow diagrams, your business requirements documents. Then we go ahead with creation of user acceptance testing plan, where we outline the strategy that will be used to verify and ensure an application meets its business requirements or not, and it basically documents the entry and exit criteria for UAT. Then we have like test scenarios and test case approaches and your timelines of testing as well. Then we identify your test scenarios where you know with respect of some of the high level business processes, and we create the test cases with some of the clear test steps. So your test cases basically should sufficiently cover most of these user acceptance testing scenarios. So it's like already the things are done, we don't have to take much care. Then we have like creation of user acceptance test cases, and then we have like we run and record the result, we confirm the business objectives, then we look for exit criteria. So that means there are like no critical defects open, no critical defects left, business process works satisfactory. So your user acceptance testing sign off the meeting with all the stakeholders, where they say that okay, now we can go ahead with this particular product. Yeah, so this was all about your user acceptance testing, and these are some of the references.